weekday morning at 7:30 Pacific, 10:30 Eastern Time for your quick political news and headlines to get your morning started off right. I'm Alex Mahajer. It is Monday, August 24th, 2020, and we have some big news to cover this morning. Good morning, Ariana from New Orleans, and everyone who's joining us live on HAPS, Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere you can get HAPS news. So it's a rough and bumpy start to the Republican National Convention, which starts today. But before we get into that, I do want to touch base on the big news that broke last night about 29-year-old Jacob Blake, who was shot in the back 7 times by police officers in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So the Kenosha News is reporting that Blake was trying to break up a fight. Video of the incident has gone viral on social media and appears to show that Mr. Blake was walking towards a van while police officers were following him with their guns drawn. As Blake opened the door to enter the van, an officer grabbed him by the shirt to hold him still, and then the video appears to depict the police officers shooting him in the back at close range. So there are 7 gunshots heard in the video. The news, Kenosha News, is reporting that Blake is in critical condition, although there are social media posts from Blake's father saying that he is stable. So we are still awaiting word. Now, this caused protests to erupt in Wisconsin overnight. And Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers commented on this. He condemned the shooting by the police officers on Sunday night, which was last night. And he says, and I quote, "While we do not have all of the details yet, what we know for certain is that he is not the first black man or person to have been shot or injured or mercilessly killed at the hands of individuals in law enforcement in our state or our country." The shooting is yet another in a string of racial killings by police officers, by unarmed people of color, of unarmed people of color that have sparked nationwide protests demanding racial justice and an end to a surveillance police state and police brutality. Republicans, of course, are seeking to politicize these protests, painting them as violent when they are largely peaceful, and depicting democratically controlled cities as descending into chaos, merely because of the free exercise of their First Amendment rights. So, in fact, there's plenty of evidence actually to suggest that the violence at these protests has been initiated by right-wing extremist groups seeking to muddy the waters and create media narratives that are harmful to Black Lives Matter protesters. These protesters are simply seeking to stop the unjust killings of people of color by police and the government systems that enable and protect the people that killed them. So I'll note that the police officers who killed 26-year-old Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, have yet to be brought to justice. So speaking of Republicans, tonight is the first night of the Republican National Convention, and as I said at the top of this broadcast, it's off to a bumpy start, an inauspicious start, if you will. Firstly, the news yesterday came late yesterday. Kellyanne Conway, who is the counsel to the White House, counsel to Donald Trump, and his former campaign manager, announced last night that she will be leaving the White House at the end of the month to tend to family matters. Hello, Liza from New York. Good morning, Gus. Good morning. So she's tending to family matters. Now, Kellyanne Conway is a trusted advisor to Donald Trump and is one of his most trusted confidants and media surrogates, and she was promoted to that position after serving as his campaign manager in the 2016 election. So the news comes amidst a lot of controversy surrounding Kellyanne Conway's family. Her husband, George Conway, is an attorney and a noted conservative who has openly denounced Trump, speaking out against him on social media since 2018. When he declined an appointment to the Department of Justice, he called the Trump administration a shit show and a dumpster fire. That's a direct quote. So Trump has also openly bashed George Conway, which must have made some very interesting dinner conversation at the Conway house. What do you guys think? It was Kellyanne Conway's teenage daughter, though, who may have tipped the scale. In recent weeks, she has posted some controversial tweets talking about years of childhood trauma and abuse, that she was seeking emancipation from her family. And so what do you guys think? Kellyanne Conway did say she wants to tend to family matters. That's why she's leaving her position at the end of the month. Her husband is also stepping away, and this announcement came simultaneous yesterday. He's stepping away from his involvement with the Lincoln Project, which is an anti-Trump conservative group who's been posting viral videos for the past few months denouncing the president on Twitter and social media. So why the sudden departures from their respective roles? What do you guys think? Maybe they're starting a Conway reality show, says Rachel Vaughn. I wouldn't put it past Kellyanne, but it seems that she's seeking to attend to family matters. And if that's the case, I wish her family well. Either way, Kellyanne Conway's final act appears to be Wednesday night during the Republican National Convention, which is this week, begins tonight. It's also been making news. It's off to a bumpy start. First, today, a group of 24 former Republican members of Congress, including Jeff Flake, Senator Jeff Flake, who left Congress in the last election, launched Republicans for Biden today to coincide with the first day of the Republican National Convention. So already off to a bit of a bumpy start when we have 24 former members of Congress sort of speaking up against the president. And then, of course, there's the RNC lineup, which has a lot of eyebrows raised. Not a single former president will be speaking at the convention, which is highly unusual. It will heavily feature members of the Trump family in key speaking roles. Donald Trump has said that he will have a main role every single night. So it's going to be the Trump show. It's going to be the Trump family show. And then, of course, some of Trump's most zealous supporters in elected office, like Congressman Matt Gaetz, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Senator Tom Cotton, and then, of course, Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio. And I will note that tomorrow morning we will be joined by Shannon Freshour, the Democrat running to unseat Jim Jordan in Ohio's 4th congressional district this November. So that should be very interesting because Jim Jordan will not only be speaking at the RNC tonight, but there is a hearing before the House, before Congress, of U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. And Jim Jordan will be speaking at that and asking questions at that. So it will be very interesting to hear tomorrow morning from Shannon Freshour, running for Congress, Ohio's 4th congressional district, and she'll be joining us live tomorrow morning. So the RNC is also drawing a lot of ridicule on social media since yesterday after the Republican National Committee announced that they were abandoning any efforts to debate, update, or adopt an official party platform at the Republican National Convention. So critics of this are slamming the decision as the most recent example of the GOP's sacrifices of their principles to a, quote, Trumpian cult of personality. So what do you guys think? Is it troubling that the RNC has no plans to release any kind of platform position to let the American people know what positions they stand on, what they plan to do for the American people? Or is it adequate that they would merely make this entire convention about sort of exalting Donald Trump? And are you troubled by that? Very interested to know what you think. Rachel says maybe Trump will ride in on a swinging rope onto stage as Ed Nugent sings, LOL. Maybe. As we know, in the last Republican National Convention in 2016, there were a lot, it was not very, how can I say this delicately? There was a lot of bombast, a lot of chants of lock her up. I'll note that most of the people that led chants of lock her up against former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton during the 2016 Republican National Convention have since been indicted and arrested. So that is sort of the news. It's now the Trump party, says Jennifer Lindsay. Yeah, I think that is what many people are speculating with this announcement that the Republican National Committee has declined to offer up any sort of platform. And the entire statement that they released as a resolution is quite interesting. If you have a chance to look it up, it's also calling on the media to depict the RNC as being zealous supporters of Donald Trump. And yes, so really, having the speaker list be really exclusively Donald Trump's family is also sort of a stark contrast to the DNC, which last week had such a broad range of people on the political spectrum, the different demographic groups. It was a very big tent, and seeing the contrast this week, a lot of ideas too, I will note, a lot of big ideas, and to see the RNC basically abandon any of the conventional party platform positions is troubling. Marcus Lovingood says, I think the best strategy would be to focus on poverty, which they won't do. Afraid the Dems didn't focus on the poor enough, which would vote in droves for a UBI, methinks. We will see. I agree with that, Marcus. And, the other thing I'll note, is that they're going to focus heavily on slamming the Democrats as democratically controlled cities, as descending into chaos. They're going to focus in on this shooting that happened last night in Wisconsin and the protests that happened in response to it, and try to say that we need to defend the police, not defund the police. They're going to drive a lot of the QAnon conspiracy theories that have been floating online. QAnon, of course, is considered an extremist terrorist group by intelligence officials, and yet the president of the United States has been touting the messaging that's come out of QAnon. So very troubling, and that's the kind of bombastic messaging we're going to get out of the RNC tonight. RNC will bombard us with images of looting and riots. Short-sighted, said Rachel Vaughn. I agree with you, and I think those are wholly disingenuous representations of what's going on. But we will see. So this has been the AM Report with Alex Mahajer for Nap Haps News. I am live every morning at 7:30 Pacific, 10:30 Eastern, right here. If you like what you hear, please consider sponsoring this content at haps.tv/@Alex Mohajer. Very happy you could join us, and we will see you tomorrow, everybody, with Shannon Frashore, who's running for Congress against Jim Jordan in Ohio's 4th Congressional District.